my various. Whoa, 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 whoa. Love is all we need to make it see. This is the time to come together. Keep life various.
The coup took place April 12th. No, April 11th. That week begin. The week of April 12th, the tension that was imposed started. They have raised the level of torturing. And so, when we came out of prison, though, then they started to say the president was, we didn't know the president was going someplace, and they said they were going to kill these people April 4th. We didn't know all of that. But begin just that beating, that torturing, we knew we were dead. We knew we were dead. And then we went to sleep. April 11, 1980. Around 3 o'clock that morning, somebody spoke Sapo from the PHP side. You guys know PHP? You been there too? PHP. You know the opposite of the football field, Anthony Tottenham Stadium? They call that place the PHP. Behind the post target. Somebody yelled from the PHP side in Sapo that on the batoba. And there was a lot of noise. So Matthew was in room 8. I was in room 13. And we shared, you know, when we want to gossip, we night each other place. And, you know, I don't think they knew what they were doing. You're putting me next to Matthew. They were just putting some bombs, you know, waiting to die. You know, they were just putting them there. So I told Matthew, I said, I heard Sapo, the Cape President Talbot. May his soul rest in peace. Gabriel first word was, Carla, please, the militia then will do what? I said, okay. But I hear outside there, the people say they can't talk about. And then we heard some, so we decided to plant our ears to the floor to see if we get sound, you know, movement. And then boom. Then somebody yelled that they had killed Charles Reddy, who was head of the Executive Marshal Battalion. Boom. Boom. Okay. Then Mr. Queer, Chia Chipo, they started their Holy Ghost business. They started praying. Yeah, Lord Chipo cut himself. He said, "You shut up. You know who finished taking the coup. You're comfortable. You're praying. Shut up." The place went quiet again. And then people started yelling. The this, the that, all kind of story. But begin when you impose started, you don't know whether it's, and I'm talking about 90-degree sun. You don't know whether it's 9 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning or day. That's how terrible the place was. And when you on the, if they believe you on the bad side, they put you in interview. Interview, you don't see, you don't recognize anything. Post-target. About 6 o'clock that day, that morning, Larry Botti, a member of the new group, I didn't know his name then, These soldiers came yelling, crying, sinking, and they broke into post stockade. They broke into post stockade to get us out of the post stockade. Larry Botte, who was in charge of that group that broke into the post stockade to free us, because the word at that time was that some people would come to the prison and they would spray us. And so General Westside sent Larry Botte to the prison to get out of there quick, just in case there was a counter coup, so we'll not be there. And so that was his preoccupation. The first work that they wanted to do was to get us out of post stockade. And you know, when they put us in post stockade, they cut your hair. You know, and not now that are bald, you know, we have plenty of hair, and they cut your hair this way. They cut your hair this way. They put rolls into your hair so you'll be looking like a common criminal. You know? And here were all the guys that you call rogues or, you know, murder were treated better than us. All because we were playing with the privileges of the ruling class. We have violated a cardinal principle in revolutionary justice, or in the justice of tyranny and dictatorship. The coup took place April 12th, 1980. They put us in this truck. All over here, brief, naked, you know, beaten, broken up. And they marched us to Kwongba's office. They told us, we are taking you to the commanding general of the new government. They were specific. They were clear. The new government has a commanding general, and we are taking you there. Mafia myself, a lot of time we gossip. Say now, new commander of the army general. So they get new government. When we want gossip so that we can walk away from OJ because he quit to give us trouble. So we walk far from him. But he himself, it caught his attention. So he too wanted to share this fun. Then Chipo came. Joy Sebe Bole was with us. Joy Bole was assistant secretary or assistant minister at the Ministry of Education. Joy Bole was also a member of the task force, of the youth task force of the True We Party. He was among those that were mandated to transform the True We Party. George Bole, Emmanuel Shaw, a lot of them. They did this, I think October, November. I for the True We Party task force. Do some homework again. Do some homework again. The coup took place. Bole was with us. So his own people arrested him because they were vexed that he. But Bole is a Sapo kid. We, on our part, there's another native kid who came with PhD, and we made friends with him. Those years, it was about book. Education, 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 education. Bole came home with PhD. We wanted to have the PhD friend. We didn't care whether he True We Party man or he graduated from Riggs or the top of people that are people. We just didn't care. We made friends with him. Kuyon Tyre from Nima, he had a PhD. We made friends with Tyre because the boy was good. Harry Nyoan came home with his engineering degree. We were excited about all the young native professionals coming home. We didn't care about their politics. We just wanted to be their friend. And in the process of our work, Bole was one of those that we the Kuto place. We stayed to the battalion, to the commanding general's office the morning of April 12th. The commandante of Post Tackett, they call him Kepa, Major Kepa. When Kepa walks, you can pick up a needle. When Kepa calls your name, please forgive me. You piss in your clothes. This is Kepa, man. And calling your name, Kepa. The Kuto place. We're standing upstairs in BDC, in Kongba's office looking. Everybody was crying, yelling. And we saw this guy, 4 soldiers ran into BDC. Upon my order, the first time I saw somebody dying. Kepa's feet could not touch the ground, the guy. By the time they will reach the brigade headquarters, Kepa was shot. And the word was, Kepa was more violent to soldiers than even the political people. So the state we were in, a Kepa is more violent to the soldier more than us, then it was really tough. So the soldier, they had their own beef. They had their own thing with Kepa, the commandante of the Post Tackett, the Kuto place. About 9 o'clock, the president of Liberia wants to see Gabriel Bacchus Matthews, Oscar Jai Quia, and Chia Chipo. These guys were crying, armed to the teeth. They came for Oscar Quia, Chia Chipo, Bacchus Matthews. Gabriel looked at me, I look at Gabriel, and we move on the side. What could this mean? Chipo wanted to know what Carla, what you say? What you think? Oscar came and put his hand around us and said, we're going to the mansion. Don't leave this barrier as long as you don't see one of us. If there's a counter coup, we are not going back to Post Tackett. My assignment was clear. We had almost 600 of us coming out of Post Tackett, half dead, and we just couldn't think that we go back to Post Tackett. We learned a little principle along these years that says it's better to die standing than to crawl on your feet. And we decided we would stand up. And that was my assignment, to stand up. As the good Lord will have it, Thomas Wesine, Thomas Kwewongba consolidated the coup. We didn't have to fight on our own behalf.
Native Sons is about Black Americans who returned to Africa long before Alex Haley and Roots to found the first republic on that continent. Liberia, a nation on the east coast of Africa whose roots are in the United States. Most of the news out of Africa, independent Africa, newsworthy kind of Africa. Liberia called top. 150 years ago, American philanthropy those things, but it suffers. Africa, independent Africa, and Southern Africa has been a catalog of brutality, tribal war, and
the coup took place. But begin just that beating. I said, okay. But I hear outside there people say they can't over. And then we heard some, so we decided to plant our ears to the floor. Has a commanding general, and we are taking you there. Mafia and myself, a lot of time we gossip. Say now, new commander of the army general. So they get new government. When we want gossip so that we can walk away from OJ because he quit to give us trouble. So we walk far from him. But he himself, caught his attention. So he too wanted to share this fun. Then Chipo came. Joy Sebe Bole was with us. Joy Bole was assistant secretary or assistant minister at the Ministry of Education. Joy Bole was also a member of the task force, of the youth task force of the True We Party. He was among those that were mandated to transform the True We Party. George Bole, Emmanuel Shaw, a lot of them. They did this, I think October, November. I for the True We Party task force. Do some homework again. Do some homework again. The coup took place. Bole was with us. So his own people arrested him because they were vexed that he. But Bole is a Sapo kid. We, on our part, there's another native kid who came with PhD, and we made friends with him. Those years, it was about book. Education, 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 education. Bole came home with PhD. We wanted to have the PhD friend. We didn't care whether he True We Party man or he graduated from Riggs or the Toba people, that people. We just didn't care. We made friends with him. Kuyon Tyre from Nima, he had a PhD. We made friends with Tyre because the boy was good. Harry Nyoan came home with his engineering degree. We were excited about all the young native professionals coming home. We didn't care about their politics. We just wanted to be their friend. And in the process of our work, Bole was one of those that we the coup took place. We stayed to the battalion, to the commanding general's office the morning of April 12th. The commandante of Post Stackett, they call him Kepa, Major Kepa. When Kepa walks, you can pick up a needle. When Kepa calls your name, please forgive me. You piss in your clothes. This is Kepa, man. And calling your name, Kepa.
Can you tell us if during that period you learned how the coup was staged, how it was organized, and what happened? And then the second question to that is information on how the initial 13 persons were executed, what led to the execution, how the decision was taken, and why there were summarily executed.
Yeah, the first question was what?
The first question was the coup, how the coup was organized. How it came together, who led the coup.
Well, according to the information I got, I was not in Monrovia when the coup took place.
Yes.
But still, I got some information. Robert Zuo, the late Robert Zuo, is there. He was the armed room personnel at the mansion. When they were organizing the coup, that the arm in mansion that they want to use. That day, he told the people he was cleaning the arms being too dirty, and he was cleaning the whole place because he was there for a whole day until in the evening. So each time they come, they say, "But Robert, why you been here for long?" He said, "This place is too dirty, so I got to clean it." So he cleaned it. Then in the evening, time for them to go to the mansion, some of them don't want to go. So according to what I heard, Thomas Kumba told them, if any of you refuse to go, I think I will cause people to know that we're going to do this. That's the time they all, because they started from BTC, he said, every one of you people got to go before me so we can go to the mansion. They passed to the back of the mansion and climbed on the fence and got in. And when they got there, the becoming was the officer of the day at that time. So when they got there, he the one who led them from floor to floor. He will be the first to go and tell the security, put down your arm. And whosoever doesn't put down his arm, he will be killed. But you know, we Liberian people, we are afraid of those things there. So they will right away put down their arm from first floor to the floor where President was living. And then we got there a lieutenant. He's a pale young man. I'm forgetting his name. He was at President door as security. So when they got there, they told him to give his arm. He took his pistol, he wanted to shoot him, so they shot him right there and killed him. Then they went inside to Turbo, according to the information I heard. When they went inside to Turbo, I think Pennon was the first person who shot Turbo.
Pennon,
yes. So I had to kill Turbo.
Haters catching cold. From head to toe, I'm in my zone. Where play you when I had no money? Like now you acting like you know me. Who you are, yeah, who you are, yeah. You know me, but I don't know who you are, yeah. Flexing on these bitches in my new designers, yeah. I know Benjamin Franklin, I don't know who you are, yeah. They been tryna hit a bullet. But this is my time, I own this Rolex. Switch it up, baby, tell me what you want. I got what you need, no, don't jack. Even though you are not there when I was riding jacks here, I can really put you on, I can show you what you want, yeah. Shawty want a threesome, I might do it for the fun, yeah. I can let her run around, get that pretty bitch her space. Cause anytime she come around, she know it's a holiday. Yeah, I don't have to see an ID, I know who's my brother, I know who's my friend and me. I I'm the only undercover secret agent and I'm trying to kill my energy. Señorita, looking at pizza, you don't need a visa. Enter my world, Mona Lisa, tu te pa' Windsor. We my promise on all my haters catching cold. From head to toe, I'm in my zone. Where play you when I had no money? Like now you acting like you know me. Who you are, yeah, who you are, yeah. You know me, but I don't know who you are, yeah. Flexing on these niggas in my new designers, yeah. I know Benjamin Franklin, I don't know who you are, yeah. Christian Dior, yeah. I don't know who you are. I know you don't like me, I don't know who you are, yeah. Yeah, who you are, I know you don't.
To Belly, they made a mistake. So my husband, anyway, he thought after the execution of the 13 people, he was taken to Belayala, I think. He and Wilfred Clark were in the same plane, and Wilfred Clark was saying, why are they taking me to Belayala? They made a mistake. So my husband, anyway, he thought it was funny that this man who said they made a mistake, he was in charge of the security at the mansion. And my husband was wondering, why is this man telling me these things? But anyway, he went to Belayala, and he said when he got there, he had on some trousers. They took a razor and cut all the trousers on his body. They cut the leg of the trousers, and they gave him a short trousers out of that. And that's the pair of trousers he stayed in for about 15 months, or maybe close to that. But he said it was on the floor all the time. There were 15 to 20 in one room, barely could make it. The bucket would be full. People had to use the bucket in the room for bathroom. But it's a long story and I cannot go into it. But people were beaten physically. Fortunately, I wasn't, and my sisters weren't. We were not raped. And I'm sure many people wanted to, but it didn't. God covered us, I'm telling you, and I believe he did. So I'll tell you a little bit of my experience, and just pieces to tell you my experience. When the coup took place, April 12th, I was home. My husband was called by my father to the mansion, and he went. Very brave man, he went. And all I knew, he came back and said, you have to leave right away. So I said, what? And then the telephone was ringing. Some of my sisters were saying the shooting at the radio station. I had to pass by the radio station, but I decided I would leave. And my marriage vow said you have to honor, respect, obey your husband. So I said I would. So I did. And he saved our lives because he kept saying, you got to leave now. Otherwise, anything happened, I won't be responsible. So I left. But just go back a little bit. 2 days before the coup, my husband and I realized that they had changed the guard. The soldiers, they didn't usually have a weapon with them. But this man, there was a new guard on post. That was I believe the Thursday we noticed that. And Friday was this big 100-voice choir because they were celebrating the centennial celebration of the Baptist church in Liberia. And we went to that. But this guard was there on Thursday. My husband said, I'm going to change him on Saturday. But this guy he had a gun on his side all the time. And my husband said, where's the old fellow? He said, oh, they just changed us, But that night, my husband, because he noticed it was different guard, when he came in the yard, he jumped over the fence to come and tell me to leave. And he said, be careful, but I will be trying to protect you all. So when we left the yard, I had to tell this man the story. I said, well, I'm just going for the weekend. He said, well, where are you all going this time in the morning? I said, well, because by then it must have been about 2 a.m. in the morning. The coup took place maybe an hour before then. Where are you going? I said, I'm going to my mother-in-law, but I'm going for the weekend. We always go for the weekends. But he was new, so he didn't know what I was saying anyway, but he knew I was leaving. And so I left. It must have been 3 hours, I don't know. But as I was leaving, I could hear the gunshots at the radio station. But do you know once I got in the car, that was myself. I had a lady that was taking care of the children, Mary Smith. She was with us, and I had 6 children. I had 3 biological children and 3 other children I was caring for. The oldest one was a girl who father worked with my father, and when he died, my father promised him that he would take care of her. So she came before I even had my first child. She came to my house, so I took her as my child. Her name is Mari, and now she's a master's. She has masters in special education. She lives in Atlanta. And then I had my 3 biological children and 2, a niece and a nephew. So we all got in one car and we drove. I was petrified. Most of the children were sleeping. My youngest was 11 months. So I had to take these 6 children plus Mary to safety, and I was scared. So all I could tell them, Mary, let's pray. So we were praying, and we didn't see or hear a thing from the time I left my house until we got to Crossville. And I know they were fighting around. So this is why I know God took care of us. So when the coup took place, the next morning, when I got to Bento then, some of my father guards was outside his house because we had to pass his house to get to my mother-in-law's house. And they asked me, what happened to Monrovia? I said, I didn't know. They said, oh, we hear there's a coup. I said, well, I didn't know which side they were on because as I told you, we know there were a lot of plots. But some people were in the government, in my father's cabinet. Vice President Benny wanted to say the information about the rights got out before they even made a decision. But so I said, I didn't know. So he said, okay, I've forgotten his name now, but he said, okay, I said, I'm going to my mother-in-law's house. He knew my mother-in-law's house. He said, we'll take care of you. We'll be okay. I was saying, oh, I hope he doesn't take care of me anyway. But anyway, I went to my mother-in-law's house and I stayed there that day. My mother-in-law, when I got there, she was awake. We got there about 5 a.m. And she said, I just woke up from a dream. She said, oh, there will be a lot of death. I said, oh, I think something is, they're shooting in Monrovia, I think there's a coup. She said, oh my God. But she said the meat, they were throwing meat to the dogs. There was so much meat. She said, oh, there's a lot of death. So 6 o'clock, we waited for the radio. It didn't come. 7 o'clock, Samuel Doe said the country belonged to a soldier. And everybody heard that news. So my first thought was, oh, I want to get my father's body. Because my father always told me that he wanted to be buried right away. He was not afraid of death. I told him, every time my mother-in-law had those dreams, I went to him. He said, I know your mother-in-law. She sees things. God speaks to her in dreams. But he said, I'm not afraid of death. When my father became president, the day he swore in after Tubman's death, that evening he came and gathered his children together. And he said, I've educated all of you, and many of us, some of them were married. Many of us were married, he said. And he said, now I want you to realize that Liberia comes first. And God first, Liberia, and then you all third. And at first I was hurt. But then I realized what he meant because he had given us the education. He told us, he said, whatever is in here, if you don't crazy, you will always have it. But material things you will never have. So get all your education. And so he told us that. So we knew that Liberia was first, and he really died for his country. So when he died, that's what I said, I couldn't cry. Because I cried the day he was sworn in as president, because I knew he would be killed. It's strange because we see from history people who are selfless, gave themselves up, and people think that they're weak. They're not weak because you're meek and humble doesn't make you weak. You meek and humble because you're strong. And he was strong in God. So that day when they killed him, all I wanted was to get his body to bury him. So that's Saturday. I said, I'm going to find my father's body. I laugh now because I was foolish. I left my 6 children with Mary. Mary, she never went to school, but she had a heart of gold. And I left Mary with my children. And then, no, sorry. I told Mary, can you go with me? I wanted somebody in the car with me. So I left the children with my mother-in-law and Mary. Mary was 12 years old. And I said I was going to look for my father. So we drove to, and then I didn't know where my husband was because he told me to leave and he said he was following us, but he never followed. So I said, I'm going to find my father's body and find my husband. So I drove to my house and got there. Just before I reached my house was on into Sheffling Road, going to the airport. Just before I reached Miss Mary, this lady, she was very wise. She said, let's wait, don't go to the house yet. Let's talk to my friend. And there was a group of small homes before my house. We stopped and she had a friend and she spoke in Basel and the friend was just crying. And I said, what she's talking? She said, she said, don't go to the house. Yesterday, the whole day, they were shooting at your house. They were destroying your house. People were moving things out and it was full of people, soldiers, everything. Then I said, what? So I turned around. Me and Mary we didn't know where my husband was, and we sure weren't going for my father because I realized I had to now live for my children. So we didn't go. So they destroyed my house that very day. So it was good I left the house, otherwise I would have been destroyed too. So we went, and I was so stunned, I just sat down because I just didn't feel there was nothing I could do. I thought this coup was to just take power and they would take Liberia to the next step. I was very naive. So I was sitting on the Sunday night. There was a lot of shooting at my brother's AB's home. AB house was not far from my mother-in-law's home. And I didn't sleep for the first 5 days after the coup. So I was awake and I heard all the gunshot and I was praying for AB. So Monday when I got up, my one Mrs. Oshoko, she's a nurse in Bensenville, she came and said, I know her very well, close family friend. She said, they went to pick up AB yesterday, but he disappeared. He escaped. And I was thankful. I said, well, at least they didn't kill him. She said, no, they didn't kill him, but they're coming for you today. And I didn't believe her. I said, why? What did I do? I never worked in the government. I've been working in healthcare. She said, they said they will find you and skin you alive. So that's when I really got scared. My mother-in-law said, you have to go in hiding. I said, why? She said, you have to. I said, but where? So she said, just go to the neighbor and tell them who you are and they will protect you. So I left in faith. To cut it short, these people I didn't know. But they took me in. I was 35 years old then. My angel sent by God, a 17-year-old boy, they call him Duku Boy. He set up a plan. He said, when the soldiers come for you, I'm going to lock you up in a room upstairs. And you stay there until I take you out. I said, what? So then he said, no, you just do that. I said, okay. And there I was, I had to surrender myself. And I did surrender myself. Because then I had nobody but myself and God. And I had the testimony, my mother-in-law, just before I left, she said, you take this and it's okay, you'll be okay. And the children will be okay. I said, okay. And I really trusted that I had nothing else, so It wasn't even half an hour after I went to that house. Joe came on to give his message to the nation. And while he was speaking, he said that he took over to help the poor. And it was good that the family heard that. And he was there to take people out of poverty.
또 빠지네. 어떡하지?
폼타입으로 빠르게 스며드는 로게인 폼의 미녹시딜 성분이 모발 성장을 촉진해 탈모를 치료합니다. 폼타입으로 간편하게 탈모엔 로게인 폼.
There's this mystery still surrounding the whole story about Plymouth in Massachusetts. What can you tell us?
Wait for my book.
Can we have a sneak preview?
Wait for my book. I tell you, I was not held in the United States for any crime. Extradition, the only thing that has to be determined in the case of extradition are two questions. One, is there a treaty? If yes, two,
Barber was killed on the 8th floor of the executive mansion. Now, I know that place because I lived up there myself. What President Tarver was killed on the 8th floor of the executive mansion. Now, I know that place because I lived up there myself. What General Kurongba and the main killer of Talbot explained, it was a young man that actually shot him. The presidential, the 8th floor is the family living floor of the president. It is very, very secured. All of the glasses up there are bulletproof glasses. The doors are sealed. So when the president enters, there's the living room, his bedroom, his wife's bedroom, the entire area, once he enters, it is secured. I'm told by John Kurongba after the firing started, and quite frankly, it's a very sad scenario. Most of the soldiers at the presidency that were guarding the president fled because their friends were staging a coup. They were all together, so they just didn't budge. They go upstairs and they actually have to knock on the president's door. After he had apparently called around the different stations, no one answered. He got up, got dressed, because the body of Talbot was still dressed, fully dressed in a white suit. He got up, got dressed. They knocked on the door. They kept knocking on the door, and he opened the door because they could not get in. Like I said, that area is secured. You cannot enter unless the president inside opens the door. And the first gentleman, I'm told by Kurongba, there's a young man called the late Nelson Toe, open T-O-E, Nelson like in N-E-L-S-O-N. The last name is Toe, like in T-O-E. He fired the first shot to be followed by others, including a gentleman called Harrison, that's Harrison, Penu. And now that Penu, I think, is P-E, and I stand corrected on this, N-U-E, if I'm not mistaken, Penu. He's also crowned. Then he was the second, but I'm told by General Kurongba that the original first shot was fired by a young man called Nelson Toe, very fiery young man who ended up getting executed with we're saying too because of his fiery behavior.
Now, was Talbot the only individual in that administration who met such a brutal fate?
No, following the killing of Talbot, several members of the government were executed.
How long after the coup was that, Mr. Taylor?
I would say not more than 3 weeks. The council decided that they had to do something to demonstrate to the world that they were serious and that to set an example, as they put it, and they executed several officers.
How many?
If I'm not mistaken, there could have been as many as 17.
And where were they executed?
Right on the beach outside of the barracks. The Barclay Training Center in Monrovia is located on the beach. And I would say from the office of the commanding general to where the execution took place, maybe 500 meters, 500 to 1,000 meters where the execution took place.
Did you observe it?
I did.
What impact, if any, did it have on you?
I had never seen anybody killed. I had seen dead bodies before, as in normal death. It was a very chilling experience for me. I stood on the balcony of the commanding general's office and looked over to where the execution occurred.
Did you know personally any of those who were executed?
I knew all of them. Some of them better than others. The speaker and others that were executed, like I said, were personal friends of my father. The president pro temp of the Senate, by the name of Frank Talbot, I had dated a daughter of his and visited his home many, many times as a young man. And there was a very good friend of mine, a personal friend of mine by the name of John, like in J-O-H-N, Sherman. He was the Minister of Commerce. The rest of the ministers, I knew them very well.
So were you party to the decision to execute them?
Really, we were party to a decision to help reduce the number of people that they really wanted to execute. I remember one evening I'm sitting down and General Kuwankwa returns from a council meeting. And mind you,
council, which council?
The PRC.
What does that stand for? People's
Redemption Council meeting.
What's that?
That's the junta that took over in Liberia. We are sitting and he comes and he's very sad. These meetings were held without anyone being invited in the beginning. Only those that staged the coup d'etat were permitted. He came very sad and he called me. He said, Taylor, the Chairman Doe has decided with the council that we should execute some people. I said, what? He said, yes. And he said, the people are, this is almost like Liberian English. The people are plenty. I said, what do you mean? So I said, about how many? He said, oh, it could be almost 200. I said, no. I said, Thomas, this cannot happen. And I got to know subsequently that other individuals, other progressive individuals had also heard this about a day later and were also pleading to say, you can't do this. We fought, at least I fought from my end to tell them that it was not that Talbot's death was sufficient, but they insisted that some people had to go because this would show that the old system had been totally uprooted. And so they finally settled on these few.
목장에서 갓 나온 우유가 갓 신선. 갓우유? 서울우유.
There's this mystery still surrounding the whole